Welcome to Library Training Services Australia's Unit ICA WEB 201A, Use Social Media Tools for Collaboration and Engagement. In this unit, you are going to be examining the context of social media and its application to businesses and libraries in particular. Social media is a term that most of us are reasonably familiar with in this day and age. However, let's unpack it. Media is a central term to this and involves the idea of the communication of information through different ways of representing that. Media consists of text, images, sounds, and other formats of data. So, social indicates interactive between people, and therein you have it. We have the communication of information, which is something that librarians should be deeply familiar with, in ways that are interactive, which is a brave new world. So, how does social media actually represent itself in our world? Social media takes a number of forms. We have things like social networking, which is ways of making friends, meeting people, sharing information about ourselves and the things that we are doing. We also have sharing of things in a more physical format, things like video sharing, photo sharing, image sharing. So we're all familiar with things like YouTube and Instagram. Image sharing, a good example of image sharing might be Pinterest. File sharing, so the Google formats and various other ways of sharing files and other material like that. Blogging is, well, it's effectively digital diarizing in a way that is publicly open and accessible, which is a bit of a new thing in terms of the world of communication, and its wide open format is a new thing to the idea of social media in the world. And of course, it doesn't always have to be full-blown entries with links to all sorts of coolness. It can be a microblog. Many of us are familiar with the short form of blogging in the form of things like Twitter. So, how complicated can this get? Back in 2008, Dr. Brian Solis gave us a really elegant depiction of this in something that he called the conversation prism. And he represented the different forms of social media and their applications, and gave us some really cool little visual representations of them in terms of the logos for different social media tools. And this is an important concept. It's reasonably complex. We can see that at the center of this we have the idea of listening, learning, and sharing conversation, and that we have tools around that in nicely color-coded petal-like arrangements that link to the different types of social media. So we have blogs, and we have blog communities, we have live streams, we have social networking, smaller forms of social networking, customer service, location-based media, which is an interesting concept, video, document, music, picture sharing, live casting, social bookmarking, crowdsourced content, and around it goes. So we've got something here that gives us the idea that social networking is not a simple landscape, and it wasn't in 2008 when Dr. Solis gave us this image. He revised it a few years later. It got more complicated. The number of logos in here alone indicates to us that social networking is something that has grown in ways that have become very difficult for any one person to have a firm grasp of in its entirety. You'll notice that he's taken the idea of listening, learning, adapting, and represented that as something cyclical within the center of this. This is the communication, the conversation end of it. But within that, he's given us a number of reasons for doing this. It should have qualities of transparency, vision, purpose, value, and commitment, but around that there are reasons for engaging in these communications. And these are business-centric, they really are. We're in a library industry, and it's not the only industry that's engaged in social media. However, things like human resources, branding, community, services, development, marketing, sales, and communications. Now, each of these then bleeds out throughout still lovely color-coded layers, and we have different purposes around the outside of that. So, social networking is still there, blogging and microblogging, crowd wisdom, question and answer type material, and it runs around through, and it's a much more finessed outer ring than in the original model. So we have micro networking, wikis, which are a fantastic digital resource that has basically replaced those great tomes of encyclopedias that we once had, and yet is a different thing altogether. We have service networking, events, and still things like music and pictures and video, etc., sharing, and all of the related tools represented as icons within this. And I would point out to you that this was done in 2014. It's already out of date. So that is the landscape within which we are going to be engaging in this, and you'll be pleased to know that you are not going to be required to become experts in all of this. So, what are you going to be doing? You are going to be using social media tools. You are going at the end of this course to be able to do a number of key things. You're going to be able to describe different types of social media. You are going to be able to compare the different tools and applications. You are going to be able to set up and use social media communications for a specific purpose in a competent way. And then you are going to be able to evaluate the effectiveness of that use of social media and whether your practice or the tool that you chose might be finessed in ways that would produce better outcomes, or indeed not. The format of this course is going to be relatively simple. We're going to be using a workbook which is going to give you key content and unpack central concepts. It's going to then link you to various reference material that I urge you to go to and read because it informs your learning. The workbook will give you a superficial understanding. Deeper context is gained out of engaging with the reference material and then taking that information and exploring the nature of that within the virtual landscape and the applications for that. This is where we are applying and coming to understandings and making assessments about that for ourselves. At periodic points through the workbook, there will be assessment tasks. These will not be onerous tasks. You'll be able to work through them fairly quickly, and as long as you have read the material and engaged with the thinking processes about that before you complete the assessment tasks, they're not going to be difficult to complete. However, through the body of the course, you will be building a portfolio of assessment tasks that demonstrate that you have met all of the requirements of the course. And at the end of this course, you are going to be competent in the use of social media for networking purposes within an organization. And, of course, for the benefit of your library, its users, and its services. Enjoy the course.